Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbach, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Joanna Elkington. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Sergeant Ronald Lanham, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Flight Lieutenant Sean McGill, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they have done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Ronald Lanham. Ronald Lanham was born on the 15th of August 1922, the eldest of 3 sons born to Timothy and Alinda Lanham of the Wattles, a farm near Canberra in New South Wales. Known as Starchy to his family and friends, he attended the local Battery Primary School and later Canberra Public Intermediary High School, where he excelled at technical drawing and distinguished himself as an excellent footballer. After school, Lanham spent a brief period working in a mechanical engineer's shop and then took a position with the Commercial Banking Company of Sydney. With that company, he first worked in Canberra and later the branch in Bombala, not far from the border with Victoria. Lanham first applied to join the Air Force in 1941 and while waiting to enlist, joined the Air Force Reserve, with whom he began to learn essential skills such as Morse code. In April 1942, he formally enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force and began training. As part of the Empire training scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who, throughout the course of the war, joined Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. In March 1943, he sailed from Melbourne to Canada for training, where he remained for 5 months. In July, he embarked for Britain and in February 1944 was attached to No. 14 Squadron of the Royal Air Force. Throughout his training, he showed himself to be an excellent airman. He attained his wireless badge in January 1943 and his air gunner's badge the following month. He was described by a superior officer as above the average as an air operator and very keen and hard-working. By August 1943, he had been promoted to the rank of Flight Sergeant. With No. 14 Squadron, Lanham participated in reconnaissance sorties from bases across North Africa and the Mediterranean, and in 1944 formed part of a detachment of the Royal Air Force Airmen based in Gisheneth on the east coast of Corsica and the Mediterranean Sea. Lanham was part of the aircrew of a Marauder reconnaissance aircraft, tasked with patrolling and supplying information about ship movements off the Mediterranean coasts of Spain and France. Shortly before 8 in the morning on the 29th of March 1944, Lanham took off on a reconnaissance mission from Corsica aboard the Royal Air Force Marauder aircraft T for Tear. The crew of 6 was all Australian, 4 of whom, including Lanham, had served together since training in Canada. They were to fly from Corsica to the neutral Spanish coast south of Barcelona, then head north towards German-occupied France, reporting on any shipping sighted along the way. Lanham served as wireless operator on the flight. Part of his role was to act as lookout for enemy aircraft, and if under attack, help to direct defensive fire. At around 11 a.m, Lanham and the crew of T for Tear were flying roughly 5 kilometres off the coast of Mataró, north of Barcelona, when they spotted a small merchant vessel. Lanham's aircraft, flying at extremely low altitude, made a lap of the ship, and as it completed its circle, crashed into the sea. All 6 crewmen were killed: Flying Officer William MacDonald, Flight Sergeant Charles Peedham, Flight Sergeant Frank Lamont, Flying Officer John Lewis, Flight Sergeant Michael Woods, and Flight Sergeant Ronald Lanham, who was 21 years old. In the immediate aftermath, local fishermen from Mataró rowed out to look for survivors. None were found, and the bodies of 5 of the crew, Lanham included, were recovered. The following day, they were buried at the Mataró Roman Catholic Cemetery. Hundreds of people, including the British consul in Barcelona, attended the ceremony. One of Lanham's close childhood friends, Peter Dawson, devoted great energy to try to find out the exact cause of the crash after the war. Some reports state that the aircraft had an engine failure as it circled at low altitude. Other reports suggest that the aircraft was fired on by the merchant vessel. The exact cause of the fatal crash remains unknown. Ronald Lanham's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Ronald Lanham, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and in the hope for a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a good evening.